Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Comedian MTG. My name is Ian. On today's episode, we are going to be breaking down the top 10 cEDH cards from Tarkir Dragonstorm. This is Magic the Gathering's newest set, and word on the street is they were looking at cEDH for this set and this design. So, with that in mind, let's check out the top 10 cards from Tarkir Dragonstorm and the associated Commander product that are going to make an impact or a splash in cEDH. If you like videos like this, make sure to hit that like button and that subscribe button. And to pick up some Tarkir Dragonstorm, you can go to a number of different places, including one of our sponsors for today's episode, Tales of Adventure Magic. Thanks for Wizards for helping make this video, and we'll talk about our other sponsor, Heavy Play, a little bit later on. Jesse. The next cEDH tournament I'll be heading out to is the Heisenberg after I go to SCG Denver. But this is talking about the Heisenberg. This is a super sweet new tournament in New Mexico that is the first being held by Tavern of Souls Gaming, and they are looking to put on a super sweet cEDH 10K tournament that is coming up the weekend of 420. It is going to be super sweet 2-day event. They have an attached cell block. They have an attached room block to help you with your accommodations and stay. And as I mentioned, it is a 2-day cEDH 10K. And legitimately, I know most good cEDH players I know are going to this event. It looks absolutely sweet. Brand new event in New Mexico, and it's a super sweet location with a lot of amazing prizes. The whole prize breakdown, its proxy policy, all of that stuff is right here on the event page, which I will leave in the description down below. Check out the Heisenberg for your next cEDH tournament. It's going to be a major event, and I am super looking forward to seeing everyone there. Coming in at number 10, we have a really interesting card here called Redoubled Stormsinger. Now, this is in the associated Commander product. It is a 3/3 first striker for 2 and a red, and it says whenever this creature attacks, for each creature token you control that entered this turn, create a tapped and attacking token that is a copy of that token. At the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice those tokens. So basically, any time that this creature moves to combat, as long as there are other tokens that have been created this turn, this creature is able to make extra token copies of those cards. Now, imagine, for example, you have a classic card like, I don't know, a certain goblin known as Kiki Jiki. That's a really interesting combination here because now you'll have Redoubled Stormsingers that are able to see combinations of Redoubled Stormsingers that have gotten already here onto the battlefield that turn. Things start to escalate rather quickly. But the most interesting place this is with fringe staple Rionia Fire Dancer. Now, Rionia plus Redoubled Stormsinger. In the command zone, Rionia is most likely the place where you're going to see this combination, but it gets out of hand insanely quickly. A couple copies of Redoubled Stormsinger, and they're just sort of multiplying by significant numbers. And also, it's worth mentioning that each of these bodies are 3/3 first strikers. So you're putting a pretty quick clock on the table really, really intensely. So, not to mention the fact that each Redoubled Stormsinger sees each copy of Redoubled Stormsingers, right? So in that earlier example of Kiki, you're just getting an extra Redoubled Stormsinger to have 2 more copies, basically. So you make a copy of this card with Kiki, makes 4 total Redoubled Stormsingers as you go to combat, right? When we start to look at things like Rionia, and we start to go, okay, even if we are making 2 copies of Redoubled Stormsinger, each Redoubled Stormsinger, if it goes to attack, is seeing 3 Redoubled Stormsingers coming in and getting out of hand. So this really, 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 really puts a clock on the table quite quickly. It is mostly going to be in fringe options like Rionia, but that's why it's here at number 10. Still an amazingly interesting card, and one that I think we'll be seeing in some of these fringe red decks, which is good because these decks definitely need a little bit of love and support. Next, we have a commander. I really like Ureni of the Unwritten. Now, you may be asking yourself, Ian, why are we talking about a 7-drop dragon commander? Well, it's a 7/7 flying trampler and says whenever it enters or attacks, look at the top 8 cards of your library, and you may put a dragon creature from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, what's really interesting about Ureni is that this creature has an amazing grind plan. While it is an outlet for things like Infinite Deadeye Navigator, flickers, or an outlet for things like infinite recasting of your commander through squee and food chain as a combination. What it really pays off for is if those plans are not working, if your, classic CEDH combo plans are not working, you have an insanely powerful grind plan. The value dragon plan in this deck is absolutely crazy, and not to mention what happens in scenarios in which you're able to flip into dragons that allow you to copy this type of ability. Things get out of hand rather quickly. There's also, people like Dracomancer have already messed around with dragons getting things like spark doubles and stuff like that. So then suddenly you're getting very cheap clones that have this activated ability, or sorry, not activated, but triggered ability over and over again. I think this is just a cool teamer deck with a very cool outlet that happens to have, once again, an insane plan if games go long. So Ureni of the Unwritten, maybe not the CEDH commander everyone's expecting to see at the table, but definitely has a lot of upward potential, and definitely has, as I mentioned, a grind plan that can really take a lot of tables by surprise. If everybody's sitting behind a Ristic, a Mystic, and a Smothering Tithe, they're not always ready to get whomped in the face by a couple dragons. Next, we have Will of the Jeskai, a sorcery for 3 in a red. It says choose one, but if you control a commander as you cast this spell, you may choose both. Instead, we have a full cycle of these in these commander products. This says each player may discard their hand and draw 5 cards. Now, I don't love the fact that this says each player may. It really gives your opponents a little too much agency, in my opinion, for this card. However, people are talking about this card in a lot of Storm decks because you're able to pitch your entire hand, draw up to 5 cards, and then as the second bullet, each instant and sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. Now, it says you may choose both instead, to be clear. So if you just want this to be a one-sided Past in Flames without flashback on its own, it can be that. But the fact that this is also a potential wheel for you to get more advantage, dump more instants of sorcerers in the graveyard, and then give them all flashback makes this a really interesting card for some Storm options. Now, Storm isn't exactly the best positioned right now in CEDH, but it's also not the most poorly positioned in CEDH either. And so Will of the Jeskai might just be a little bit of kick for those stormier decks in our format. Did someone say Snapcaster Mage at home? Well, maybe not quite. We have Songcrafter Mage here. 4 Teamer, green, blue, and red. You get a 3/2 with Flash. When this creature enters, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains Harmonize until the end of turn. Its Harmonize cost is equal to its mana cost. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with Harmonize, you may cast a card from your graveyard for its Harmonize cost. And you may tap a creature you control to reduce that spell's cost by X, where X is that creature's power, and then you exile the spell. So basically, you're giving something flashback, but with a potential reduction. So, for example, if you have let's say, a Wheel of Fortune in your graveyard, and you go to cast this Songcrafter Mage, it is important that I believe the timing restrictions are still the same because you're still casting it from your graveyard, just like it would be with a Snapcaster Mage, right? But say you're on your main phase, you cast Songcrafter Mage for this teamer cost. You can then cast the Wheel of Fortune and use this Songcrafter Mage to make it only cost a single red, right? Because by tapping the Songcrafter, you're reducing it by 3 generic mana. Now, in this case, obviously, it's only 2 generic mana, but the point is still clear. I think it's actually really interesting that this gives a little bit of extra push to decks that may have higher power creatures, not only in the command zone, but just as a part of their central game plan. And the fact that Songcrafter Mage on its own has a 3 power body is, in my opinion, not irrelevant, right? You can look at 4-drop spells and just cast this creature and then get them back out of the graveyard for basically 4 mana, right? Teamer plus whatever the one pet that you couldn't pay for is in this moment. So despite people sort of joking that this card is just worse Snapcaster Mage, I think it's really relevant to note that because of the fact that it costs 3, you can reduce spells by 3. It's essentially free in some aspects, right? Which is kind of interesting to think about, right? When you look at Snapcaster Mage, it's always 2 plus whatever the spell's mana value is going to be. With Songcrafter, as long as you're casting something that has 3 generic mana value in its casting cost, you are explicitly getting this effect for 0 mana, right? So there's definitely some interesting dynamics here with this Songcrafter Mage. The fact that it has Flash obviously makes it significantly more playable. And I think there's a lot of really cool stuff here with this card. So I'm very excited to see what the future holds for Songcrafter Mage. I'm completely unrelated to CEDH. I love the idea of this being a collected company card, and in the future just being able to like recast collected companies by just tapping this and them only costing a green. Obviously, not a big CEDH thing here, but just that idea and also being back on Tarkir makes me nerd out so much about that potential that I had to make it here in this episode because that's sick. Now we have one of my favorite cards in this set. This is Dracogenesis, which I've already dropped a short about on this video. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can enjoy a fun little YouTube short describing all the fun Tiamat nonsense that you can do with Dracogenesis. But the TLDR is you cast dragons for free. Doesn't have restriction from where you're casting them as well, right? So it's better than things like Dream Halls, better than things like Omniscience for casting dragons specifically. And what's really interesting here is that this is an enchantment, meaning you can sneak it into play with a lovely little Academy Rector. There is an Academy Rector Tiamat Dracogenesis deck that I'm really excited to brew around. I've already got like sort of a beta list together. So I'm excited to potentially give it a shot and see if Tiamat maybe has some legs in cEDH now that Dracogenesis is around, which is a wild, crazy sentence that I just said with my mouth. Dracogenesis making a dragon omniscience potential a viable strategy here in cEDH. So I'm excited for this deck quite a lot. You know, I'm not going to go out of my way to say that this is going to be a tiered contender by any means, but this is opening up some really cool fringe strategies that previously did not exist. So I am all for ridiculous cards like this being printed into EDH in general. First of all, I think casual players are going to absolutely love this. People are going to be casting their Dragons for free, and they're going to have a great time. And us sweaty CEDH players might be doing some dragon combos while your opponents stare you down with the blue farm list. Now, while we can discuss which cards in Tarkir Dragonstorm deserve to be number one, it's very clear which deck box company deserves to be number one, and I'm talking about Heavy Play. HeavyPlay.com/comedian for 10% off your order. We've been working with Heavy Play for months now, and I could not be more happy with this partnership. They make amazing products that I use at literally every tournament I go to. Even though I have no relationship with Heavy Play that makes me use their Heavy Play products, I am always using Heavy Play whenever I am attending tournaments. I am addicted to using their deck boxes, their dice trays, all of it. Their deck boxes are sleek and awesome design. They have super sweet magnet clasps that I'm going to try not to spike the audio with, but do so unsuccessfully. And they've got a brand new line of products, including new art mats, which I'm going to pull up right now. They've got brand new art mats. Now, they used to just have sort of generic mats, but now they've got a whole brand new Mox series, which I think the art on these is nauseatingly beautiful. They have one for each color Mox. You know, I had to represent my red love. They also have a Black Lotus mat, which is breathtaking, absolutely. And they've got brand new products on the line as well as that. Now, if you're someone who's like, I like the Heavy Play products, but I don't want to use their play mats, that's totally okay too, because they've created playmat holders, which are a super cool magnetic option that allow you to use non-heavy play mats and just sort of magnetically slap them onto your product. They go and equip to your deck box. It is awesome. Look at that. Look at that. I'm no hand in that stuff all the time. You also can slap your dice tray, boom, right here as well. And if you're looking for something that can hold more deck boxes than one, we have the brand new deck box holders, which can fit, I don't remember the top of my head, but several Heavy Play deck boxes. And it's super sweet magnetic design, just like the deck boxes. And the inside interior is absolutely gorgeous. Love using all of these Heavy Play products. Wow, that snap was solid. Make sure to check out heavyplay.com/comedian for any number of these products. I cannot recommend using Heavy Play enough because honestly, I love every second of it, and I have been super happy with this partnership because their products absolutely rock. This is perhaps one of the most innocuous looking cards for cEDH maybe ever. However, I think this card is real in a number of different archetypes. Let's talk about Stadium Headliner. It is a mobilize 1/1 goblin warrior for a single red mana and has the activated ability to sack this creature. And it deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature. So why are we talking about this little dork? A couple of different things. It has two very relevant creature types, Goblin and Warrior. Now, Goblins are not exactly thriving in cEDH at the current moment, so mostly we're going to be talking about the fact that it is a 1-drop 1/1 that makes a 1/1 when it attacks, which is actually extremely relevant in our format because, firstly, we're going to be talking about Timna the Weaver, a very relevant commander that has dominated this format since its printing in 2016. We're also going to talk about Najeela. This is one of the earliest 2 warrior Najeela enablers of all time. This is a 1-drop that gets you 2 warriors for Najeela's ability. Now, it is worth mentioning that when you mobilize, it creates a tapped and attacking creature, right? These creatures will not count as being a warrior that attacks, right? The same would be if you played it in a Winota deck or something like that. However, this is 2 bodies coming down right away for a 1-drop that also has upside. It's also just happens to be a removal spell on a body that you can repeatedly move through. Now, what's interesting about this card is with those Najeela lines that we talked about, with cards like Samet and stuff like that, it really escalates rather quickly, and you're making a warrior every single turn, meaning that a lot of these creatures that get triggered whenever things come in, all those types of things, they're all giving you a bunch of value. And not to mention, this really, really, really accelerates the win potential with Derevi lines in Najeela to the point where those are very relevant a lot quicker in the game. So Stadium Headliner really helping to make some real big Najeela nonsense happen pretty quickly in the game. I think this is going to be a great card for any combat-based deck. We're talking about Winota, we're talking about Najeela, we are talking about Timna decks, we're talking about Jetmir, things like that, that they're really going to care about this card. Now, a number of the cards that I just mentioned are fringe strategies. However, there's just a lot of upside on this card. And not to mention, there's even more fringe decks that care about this effect that I haven't gone into because they're not the most relevant at this time. But point is, Stadium Headliner, for seeming like a dorky little 1/1 goblin for one, gives a lot of play in cEDH to some unique strategies. Here we have one of maybe the most effective stacks pieces ever printed. We have Clarion Conqueror for 2 and a white. We have a well-statted body. This is a 3/3 flyer for 3 mana, which is pretty good already. Not to mention the fact that when you're going to combat, it helps that your opponents can't be doing the stuff that they would love to do to disrupt you. It has this static that says activated abilities of artifacts, creatures, and planeswalkers can't be activated. Now, I know what you're saying. I've always wanted my cursed totem to also be a Stony Silence that also hates planeswalkers. Yes, yes, yes. We've all been saying it for so long. This is one of the most aggressive stacks pieces ever printed. And the reason I can't put it up near number 1 or number 2, I mean, first of all, stacks is probably the most difficult archetype in all of cEDH to play correctly. It is. You also have to navigate the pod socially. It is a tough task to conquer. Now, that being said, this is a good way to conquer those things because it is a stacks piece that is so powerful. It will be played in the most dedicated of stacks decks because most players can't break parity on this. However, that comes to the tough part here, which is most players can't break parity on this. This is a card that a lot of players are going to struggle to go up against, and struggle to even use in their decks, right? There are going to be stacks decks that are like, hey, I really want to have my Ranger Captain of Eos. I don't want to shut that off. Or maybe I'm Winota, I'm in Boros. I don't know if I can really afford to lose all my creatures or all my artifacts, right? So Clarion Conqueror might be one of the most powerful stacks pieces of all times and one of the most oppressive pieces of all time, and also maybe not even be able to be played because it's so good at stopping people that it's good at stopping you as well. So Clarion Conqueror, I think, is going to be a really interesting card to see what its impact is in cEDH moving forward. I will shout out Sephirus of the Hidden Way, as I believe that is one of the commanders that can very, very aggressively take advantage of this piece without really taking too much damage to its own game plan, as most of that deck is based around triggered abilities. So Clarion Conqueror coming in here at number 4, being, as I said, maybe one of the best stacks pieces ever printed. Well, this is a wild card, and I definitely think that there are other players of cEDH who are actually even higher on this card than I am, but it's here at number 3. We are talking about Nature's Rhythm. For green, green, and X, we have a sorcery that says search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. It also has Harmonize for X and green, 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 green. X and 4 green, to just be able to recast this card out of your graveyard. Now, a lot of people are really excited about this card in a number of different decks, right? We all know Finale of Devastation, we all know Invasion by Ikoria. Now, the difference between those cards is that this does not look at your graveyard, which is very relevant. It does not allow you to pull things out of the yard. However, this is one of the best green tutors of all time. This is a very powerful green tutor that also just says, hey, by the way, if you go pull a big creature out of your deck with the first half of this mode, or if you're, oh, I don't know, playing a deck like Kinnan, or, hey, all of you Rog Thrasios players that are playing, what's that? Turbo Gaia's Cradle? Yeah, being able to pay 4 green and X isn't actually that hard in cEDH when, once again, people are playing Turbo Gaia's Cradle strategies, or playing decks like Kinnan that all of their dorks tap for 2 green. It's not that hard to get this thing popping off and basically get 2 Finale of Devastations slapped together in one spell. Now, obviously, when I describe this 2 Finale of Devastations, we're ignoring the part where this does not hit the graveyard, and then it does not have the Crater Hoof mode of Finale of Devastation. That being said, this is still an insanely powerful card. Nature's Rhythm is 2 tutors slapped into one and going to be a great piece for cEDH moving forward. Coming in at number 2, when I first saw this card spoiled, my jaw literally dropped. I could not believe this card was printed, and there has been a lot of dialogue since its reveal about whether it's as good as it reads, but it reads pretty busted. This is Mistrise Village, a land that really only needs a blue color identity to operate in your deck. It is a land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a mountain or forest. So Temur colors are specifically the best place to be playing this card. However, Simic for decks like Kinnan is a really good place to play this card. Yeah, Is It decks also a really good place to play this card. 3 and 4 color decks that don't necessarily have both these colors but may have one or the other. Still pretty good. I'll stop circling around the point now. It taps to add a blue mana. Pretty good. And for blue and tap this land, the next spell you cast this turn cannot be countered. Crop rotation has never been scarier, I think. Mistrise Village is very powerful. I think this is a very strong land. There are going to be decks where this comes in tapped. I do agree with the number of people who are reading this card and going, yeah, look, for 2 blue, which is basically the equivalent of what you're paying for this card because this is a land that taps for blue and you need blue to invest into it, making a spell uncounterable is pretty solid, right? It's basically the equivalent of backing up a spell with a mana drain, which I get. However, the investment you have to make to play this land is not that high, really. You just need to play blue mana sources and have the ability to have it come in untapped, most of the time being the optimal way to play it. And then, maybe your win condition just can't be stopped, right? Like, this is a really interesting land, and I think it provides a lot of value to a lot of powerful decks in cEDH. The idea that, hypothetically, you're playing Kinnan, and end step before your turn, you can crop rotation into this and then put an uncounterable Basalt Monolith on the stack as soon as you untap for your next turn is so real, it's crazy. Now, it's interesting because, we already have Grand Abolishers, we already have Ranger Captains, we already have silence effects in the format. So it's not like these types of things don't exist and haven't existed in the past. However, it is really hard to argue, with blue already being one of the most dominant colors in this format, that this card will not make an impact at all. I think it definitely will. I think this card will be very powerful, and I'm nervous to see what it does to the format because I would love to believe that this would give non-white blue decks a Grand Abolisher style venture into the format that would allow them to have a little bit more play, and so that the turbo lockup Ristic Study effects could be a little reduced, right? That's kind of the desire with a card like this. However, what also could be the case is that this card creates a lot of unfun patterns, and that just putting uncounterable spells in the stack makes people feel like they don't have agency in the game. And I hope that that's not what this effect is. I hope that this card is fun and cool to play and gives counterplay to archetypes that need it. But also, it could very much not, and that could suck a lot. So we shall see with Mistrise Village, but it's definitely a card that has me a little trepidatious to be excited. It's hard for me to like spoiler cards like this because they feel like they're just generically good and could break stuff. And that's not exactly the kind of cards I like to see. Our number one spot, by, in my opinion, a country mile for impact on cEDH is Voice of Victory. This is a human bard, 1/3 for 2 mana that says mobilize 2. Whenever it attacks, you create 2 tapped attacking 1/1 red warrior creature tokens, sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step, and your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Now, this is another card that I've already done a YouTube short about, but boy, oh boy, does this card make me not feel great. For those who haven't been paying attention to cEDH over the past X amount of time, Timna the Weaver has been one of the best commanders of all time, ever. It's arguably the best commander ever. And when you have a potential of Voice of Victory as early as turn 1, being able to lock down interaction at the table as early as turn 1. Now, yes, we've had things like Grand Abolisher and stuff like that before, but this is so easy to cast for 1 and a white. The difference between double white pips and 1 and a white in 4 and 5 color decks is nauseatingly different, right? So now we have to analyze this, the fact that, hey, we're looking at 1 and a white for a well-statted 1/3 body, that if you hypothetically just play something like a Chromox or a Mox Diamond, the ability to go turn 1 Voice of Victory no longer can be interacted with until this card is removed. Turn 2, play Timna, go to combat with Voice of Victory, attack, and have the upward potential of connecting with 3 players, meaning draw 3 from your Timna as early as turn 2, is not exactly the best notion for diversity in the format. It definitely pushes these Timna decks, which once again have already been some of the S tier decks of the format, even farther ahead, which is not super fantastic. It's very rare that you ever catch me on the show saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't have printed a card. This one feels like it was not needed. It is nice that other white decks maybe get a easier to cast interactive piece like a Grand Abolisher style effect, but I don't think we needed this. I don't think the format is better for a card like this. I think, if anything, it hurts diversity in the format. White was already very powerful, and this is a card that happens to once again combo disturbingly well with one of the best commanders of all time that didn't need any help. I hate to be so pessimistic about this, but it kind of is a bummer. I'm kind of sad that this card was printed, realistically speaking. You know, the something to be said about the fact that yes, this once again has this mobilize ability, so it's kind of cool with Najila, and there's some interesting stuff in the fact that you can flip over another human Grand Abolisher style effect in a deck like Winota, but yeah, kind of bummed about Voice of Victory, if I'm being transparent, and that's a bit of a shame because I would love to end a top 10 cards in cEDH breakdown with, and I'm so excited for each and every one of these cards, but realistically, my answer here is I'm so excited for 8 or 9 of these cards, and this last one is kind of a bummer, and that's all right. However, if you're looking to pick up singles for this format, if you're looking to buy all the broken cards that you would like in cEDH, boy oh boy, do I have a single for you to pick up, including at one of our sponsors today, Tales of Adventure Magic. Tales of Adventure Magic, as known as ToaMagic.com, is one of the best places to pick up your Magic singles, as they have an amazing selection of singles, from cards from the brand new Tarkir Dragonstorm to reserve list pieces that are super hard to find nowadays. They've got kind of it all. ToaMagic.com, and use code Comedian at checkout to get a little discount off of your order at toamagic.com. They have an amazing selection of singles, and they have amazing shipping options available, including options to pick up at location at major events. Check out toamagic.com to get your singles today. Now that I've made the smoothest segue of all time, I'm really appreciative of everyone who stopped and watched this video. Thank you so much for watching our top 10 breakdown of all the cards from Tarkir Dragonstorm about to hit the floor in cEDH. What do you all think about this top 10 breakdown? Do you think there were other cards that I should have mentioned in our top 10? Now, I will say I am doing an extensive set breakdown next Monday that you can find on the Mind Sculptors, my other podcast. Information for that you can find in the description down below. Thank Cal, who also edits these videos here on the channel. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff here in Tarkir Dragonstorm, and make sure to leave comments down below if you find any of these cards interesting. Thank you so much to our sponsors today, Tales of Adventure Magic, Heavy Play, and Wizards of the Coast. Remember to go grab your Magic singles while you can and pick up these new cards for Tarkir Dragonstorm, which will come out April 11th, pre-release next weekend.